Hey guys, this is Rash here, and today I have a very special guest with me. I actually have with me my good friend. His name is Kelvin Sito. He's the founder of Growth Investing Mastery. He's one of the most talented investors that I know of. He specializes in investing in growth stocks. And as most of you guys would know, last week there was major turmoil in the market. And I just wanted to get his views on what he thinks about the entire situation, whether he thinks this will spiral into actual recession, and what's his game plan, right, moving forward. Are there possible opportunities that you're actually looking at? I want to get deep down into Kelvin's mind and see what he thinks. All right, so welcome, Kelvin. Welcome to the show.
Hey Rash, really, it's a big pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. So, Kelvin, let's get right down to business, man. So last week, the market had a major sell-off, right? We saw, a couple of days where the Dow dropped over 1,000 points. It was so scary, right? Rightfully so, because the COVID-19 is spreading like crazy all around the world. So, what are your points of view? Do you think this will actually spiral into actual recession? And and how are you actually reacting towards this entire situation?
All right, so I guess what we can do is probably learn from history, right? So we have seen um, cases whereby we have SARS, H1N1, and how did it affect the market? And honestly, I think while it has real and tangible impact to the economy, but I would say that on a large scale of things, um, the market is largely driven by earnings in the long term, but in the short term, it's driven by a lot of sentiment. So if you could think about it, is that investors hate to deal with uncertainty. But at times, we do have to ask ourselves this question: is uncertainty risk, right? Sometimes things that may be uncertain, but it may not be risk. So, um, it may sound a bit funny, but I haven't been following the news a lot, like every day. But if you ask me whether do I believe that it will spiral down to crisis, my honest take is no, because I have seen how things could change very quickly. Just give you an illustration here. I think when I came back from my US trip, I came to Singapore. The streets was pretty empty. The trains was pretty empty, even though it's on a weekday morning. But I think a few days ago when I took the train again, it was packed. Right. So I really asked myself if this is a systematic issue that could last way longer than we expect, then I feel that perhaps um, a crisis may happen. But I feel that a lot of us, we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now. So we tend to have this issue in terms of psychology aspect. We tend to extrapolate and believe this issue is going to persist for a long time to come. But I think at the same time as well, this issue could revert out very rapidly. And because of that, I tend not to want to make big shifts in my portfolio right now, because again, coming back to what I believe earnings drive the long-term results. So what I mean by that, I do believe that even though at times of uncertainty, if businesses is able to still grow its profits uh, in a big way, it have demonstrated resilience in their profit, then I believe that their valuations would still be very compelling, and it will become a great opportunity for us to buy a lot more. So I guess it's really about not wanting to make some major shifts based on what we are seeing right now. And I think that, I mean, it's my belief and my hope that this situation could reverse quickly enough.
Very nice, man, dude. But talking about earnings, right? So a lot of companies have already announced that their revenue guidances will be down. Like Mastercard and Visa have already said that we're expecting a lot lower revenues that we're actually going to be collecting. So that will definitely make a big impact on short-term earnings at least, right? So knowing that, what should your course of action be? Should you just hold, stay on? Should you be adding positions? Should you actually be selling right now? What is your take?
Um, well, I guess uh, I think when it comes to investing, everything really comes down to the price you are paying.
Mm,
So if you are buying at a reasonable price, even though you have kind of projected the future earnings and it still looks cheap to you, then I would consider it to be something you should actually buy, because the way I look at it, that when I started investing, I kind of knew this phrase. Peter Lynch, he say a lot more money is lost timing the market than really losing the actual money in a crisis. And I know for sure that in the first 2 years when I started investing, I had some sleepless night because I was just following the news. I was doing a lot of ridiculous things. And the fact is that, again, I think for the last 3 years, I've known of friends who have gone to the sidelines, meaning they kept cash mostly. People have like 30%, 40% cash. And not saying that it's a bad thing. I think they're being very conservative. But you see, like no one would ever know whether a crisis would happen. And um, and so what if it happens, right? So let's say today I go with the assumption that I will be still buying great companies at accessible prices. And what if the crisis do happen? Then I'll say, so be it, right? Even though I may not have cash to deploy, I'll say so be it. Because at the end of the day, I believe that, investors, we are often so compelled to say, hey, I would really want to make as much money as I want within a first year, within 1 year time frame, 2 year time frame, and that causes us to take perhaps some unnecessary risks, and that causes us to pressure ourselves a lot on timing the market. Perhaps wanting to have something even called a perfect timing. But honestly, I think it doesn't exist, and I think that all investors will eventually have some speed bumps along the way. But along the way, if you, like for example, I think of it as an analogy of driving a car. I want to go to my destination, Marina Bay Sands, right? And would I say that, oh, because I think there's going to be a rain soon, which is why I don't drive my car, right? I would not do that, right? I would say even though there's a possibility of rain, even though there's possibility of roadblocks here and there, I will still continue driving, and I may be slower, but I will eventually reach there. As compared to say, I never want to drive my car. I want to wait for perfect timing to drive my car. You may reach your goal a bit slower. And I also learned that from a lot of great investors is that even today, even though markets are never certain, right? But what could be certain is that earnings and the prices that you purchase those companies. So that's just how I think.
That's beautiful, man, dude. I love that point of view. I think it puts a lot of things into perspective. Yeah,
Mm.
puts a lot of things into perspective. That's fantastic. No, but undoubtedly, right? Like last week when people saw prices just plunging 10%, 20%, sometimes it's hard to stomach for a lot of people, right? Like it's
True.
like, oh shit, man, like dude, so how what do you say to maybe ease their tension, ease their fears? They're like, no, because it's not easy, right? Seeing 1,000 point drop, suddenly seeing a portfolio down, for some people 20, 30%, for example. Yeah, what would your advice be to some of them, some of those people?
So this is really nothing earth-shattering in terms of advice. It's just something really simple. I do think that um, you know I think what I tend to tell them is that I try to normalize their
Mm,
fears,
mm,
to tell them that, hey, like if you invest every 10 years or every 5 years, a 10% drop, a 20% drop, that's perfectly normal. And you would go through those phases, right? And if you can't stomach it, then probably the stock market may not be for you. And I even tell them, like every single time before you start investing, you just got to know these things for sure, that even though you've done all your homework, but because it's just pure sentiment, things that are irrational, stock prices do drop 30 to 40. And if they could understand and see from the perspective that this is something really, really normal, I think over time they are, I would say, accustomed to these drops.
mm.
Because the fact is that a lot of investors may be new, they have not experienced declines like 10%, 20%. But however, I guess for you and I, we have been through that. We know that's perfectly normal. And it's just the same thing, right? If you experience something for the first time, you'll be very, very scared. But after you experience 2 times, 3 times, it gets pretty normal, and you think that, hey, this is not something that's end of the world. At the end of the day, these businesses are still making money, they're still growing. Businesses do not drop forever. It's still not like things will bounce back. And again, I think that if an investor stresses themselves to perform very, very well in the first in the year time framework, a 2 year time framework, then I think it's really going to be very, very tough. But if you ask yourself that, hey, whatever I'm going to do right now, I measure myself based on a 4 years, 5 years time frame, right? You would think that you would believe that investing is a lot more fun because you get to learn more business as compared to just trying to get a perfect timing, trying to win every trade. Sometimes you may seem like you're losing temporarily, but I would say that any investing decision that you make will be proven right or wrong in the third year onwards.
Dude, can I ask you of your, maybe some of your personal stories, some stocks that you invested in, they maybe drop 10%, 20%, 50%, maybe, I don't know, right? Like, and how your emotions were, and whether you decided to cut loss or not. Like, could you share like maybe some specific stock examples where you experienced this kind of thing?
Um, Okay, let me think.
Everything make money, bro.
Okay, so in the first few years, I think I do encounter those issues, but uh, as of now, I think a lot of things they tend to drop like 4 or 5%. I or even 10% at times, but I sort of become immune to it. I would just say that when I started out buying stocks that actually fell 20%, I would often feel panic. I would be very very worried, and I would um, you know just kind of feel guilty, why I haven't kept enough cash, why I bought this stock way earlier, shouldn't I wait for a lower price, right? And that caused me a lot of worry, and there are times whereby I just worry so much that I stop myself entirely. And
example. Give me an example.
okay, this isn't okay. So this is a company called IP International.
Okay, happy.
So it's a Singapore-based company. They are parts assembler for iPhone. So their main client is actually Apple. I guess when I first bought it, I bought it with a lot of conviction. And there are times whereby even though my first I'm down 20%, I would and I would feel very very worried. And even though I've been investing for many years, it's just a natural thing to feel worried, to feel fear. But I guess it's just the degree of how much you feel the fear, right? So for me, I've been through situations whereby my portfolio is down 20%. I bought some that didn't really do well, and I made several mistakes. But what I've learned from it is that whenever you feel that your portfolio is down, don't ever associate that with the fact that you and the fact that you made the wrong decision, right? It can be a right decision. In short term, it may look bad, right? But in the long term, it will look good. So what I mean by that is every single time when I'm down 3%, I usually would just question myself over and over again, and I feel all these negative feelings, right? But now I think when I'm down 20%, what I would always do is that I'll find people and I'll just talk to them about my positions, talk to them, what I'm missing out here, what are my blind spots. I feel that over time, what has overcome and achieved results is to have those I would say advisors, like really good investors. I tend to use them and as springboard, and sometimes they'll tell me things that I probably missed out, and at times they will assure me that this will look good. So I think no matter how we are as investors, we always have blind spots, and I think what has helped me, firstly, having this group of advisors up with, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that many investors may have is that they felt that investing is a very personal journey, right? Whatever they buy, whatever they sell, it's all up to them, right? But I felt that really, really smart investors, they tend to share their problems out there, and they realize that because you are the one buying the stock, you may feel fear, you may become very overprotective about it. But have beliefs, but yet be flexible enough to test your beliefs with other people.
Interesting. So having a group of advisors who are better than you to give you like kind of sounding board to actually know what to do. Okay, that's great, man. So dude, like let's say for example this COVID-19, maybe let's just say, right, again, nobody knows, but let's just say for example this actually goes into a actual recession, for example. My question to you is, let's say everything becomes really really cheap, the market comes down to a PE of, I don't know, 12, for example, right? If I were to give you only three things that you can pick, what would they be?
Three things.
Only three companies that you can actually maybe buy, and let's assume that all of them are available at a discount, right? What would your three picks be?
So I think I I think in those scenarios, I will go for things that are very, very simple to understand and they are bound to do very well. Because, so I share with you, this company I think is very familiar with you and I. It's Facebook. And why do I say that? If you think about the total addressable market for Facebook, right? Every person that has an internet connection, a mobile phone device, will be part of Facebook's addressable market, right? And I think the fact that there's so much more in Facebook. So I'll just give you a few examples, right? We know of Instagram. They are trying to create an e-commerce shop on Instagram, and just think about the reach that they have, right? They don't need to take a lot. They don't need to take a huge percentage of every transaction, just a small one, but they serve a large audience. And I think the fact that if you look at the physical world, right, there's the amount of advertisements that you can paste on physical buildings is very limited. But then if you think of their latest product, the Oculus, which is the AR VR headset, it has become a reality. And in terms of the app itself, the rankings has been increasing in the App Store. So what I mean by that, if you could wear a headset and you could go virtual shopping, you like the item, you check it out from there. Or let's say it could be a virtual world, you can walk around and then you can see advertisements of virtual buildings. And when it's virtual, it's limitless, right? You can actually put the amount of advertisements because there's no limit to the number of buildings you can do. And if you go to India, right, you can see WhatsApp is becoming like a business accounts. You can see menu, you can create invoices. And I just think that there's a lot of untapped potential in that. And just something that I observe is that these days there's a lot of regulations being imposed on these tech companies, and Facebook is one of them. And right now, Facebook knows that they're under regulation, which is why, although the regulations are increasing, they're actually intentionally hiring so many people to increase their expenses dramatically, right? Just to show that their profits are not growing, because now they are kind of like under the watch of the management. But I think when the regulations become more easy on them, that's where the earnings will start accelerating again. So I think Facebook is something that is either proof, I would say, honestly.
Okay.
There's no one that could compete with them. And now that Facebook is also facing a lot of regulations, for any new social media that wants to compete with them will also be faced with the same amount of regulation.
Absolutely.
And they compete with creating the teams to meet these regulations, I think would be very difficult. So cut a story short, Facebook is one. Still, I think is what we are also very familiar with, and I think the company is called Masters. The fact is that you see, as the world starts printing money, right, the money supply grows, and the way I would like to look at Visa is that for facilitating the world's transaction, all they are taking is just one small bite, right? And you can just think of it, like in Singapore, if you earn money, corporate, personal, you pay taxes, right? And I think that a Visa is just the way I look at it is like, you're just paying a small amount of taxes for you to make your payments smooth, and though a lot of people try to compete with them, but the fact is that they have linked up over 400 banks, and that's a massive, massive undertaking that we have not seen anyone succeeding. And this whole industry is just Visa and Master alone, and no competitors, even banks have to partner with them, even fintechs have to partner with them. It's really something quite incredible.
Yeah.
So
even cryptocurrency have to partner with them, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that they can also be the one that supply that network to crypto as well.
Great.
So we talk about Facebook, we talk about Visa. The third one, which will sound a bit new to many people, is this company called Match Group. So Match Group owns Tinder. The way I think about it is that you see, the things that I like to buy tend to be non-discretionary, meaning good times there's demand, bad times there's demand, right? So I think like personally in my life, how I see it is that people are getting busier and busier and busier. And the fact is that you have to go to meet someone, you ask questions about them here and there, and all these things, right, will require so much time. But with Tinder, actually they do have an AI system engine behind it, whereby they would kind of realize, what kind of people you like. And from there, you can make better choices. And you see, just think about it, right? In the old ways, how do you get to know a girl or guy? You probably go out a date, you probably spend $30, $40 a meal. Then if you realize that the date is not suitable for you, what happens? That, okay, bye-bye, we're not going to meet anymore, right? But you invested $30 to $40 in that meal itself. But what if you say that if I take $30 to $40 and just take it as a subscription every month, let's say every month you go out a date, right? So just take $20, $30, a very, very low amount, you subscribe to maybe Tinder Go, whatever, right? And you can get better matches, right? And I think that it has such an exponential revenue model that it has not been fully exported yet. So what I mean, right now, people are just matching themselves with each other. But how about eventually if Tinder introduce like dating places, or let's say F&B places that can possibly provide and earn a referral card from all these restaurants. And I think that if you look at the app itself, in US, there's no other competitor. In India, it's going very well. So they've been doing very, very well in very large addressable markets. And I think that the fact that even though it's recession, like people still needs love, right? So subscription has been known to be very, very sticky. I think the churn rate has been known to be very low as well. So there you go, Facebook, Masters, and also Tinder.
Dude, I'm smiling to myself, and the reason I'm smiling to myself is At this point of time, I own all three of these companies in my portfolio.
Amazing.
Dude, like I own all three of them, right? So, I'm happy that we think very similar, right? I believe the same for Match Group as well. A
Yeah.
little bit of a rocky stock though, it goes up, comes down, a little bit volatile as well. But I'm actually kind of surprised that you actually said that because, I would think that compared to Facebook and MasterCard for sure, their moats are incredible, right? Match Group wise, their moats, yeah, they have competition, but yeah, they're the market leader. But do you think their moats are as strong? Do you think really?
I think this has to be okay. So the way I look at it is this supply side, right? So demand is very clear, but how about the supply side? So supply side meaning what? If I would just to assess, if I just download an app, and because there are not many people on those accounts, right? I may not have a very good experience of that. But on Tinder, you can see that the number of downloads, installations, I think the chances of you finding a date is a lot higher. And I think what also makes Tinder more interesting is that so you see sometimes the matches is a bit difficult, right? Like you have friction, meaning you don't really get to match with people you really enjoy. But over the years, let's say for example, in the United States, if you go to certain carnivals, certain parties, right? They launch this localized kind of matching whereby you can match with people that's pretty much near you when there's festivals, carnivals, right? So I think that a lot of people did not haven't really appreciated enough that the fact that you want to go to a platform, and if there's massive amount of users, it actually reduces friction, it actually increases the frequency of you getting a date, and that reinforces you that to say that, hey, this app really works, as opposed to maybe you go to an app, you find a date only once per month, and then you don't really have good experience, and even though you pay for subscription, you may not feel you are getting the value, right? Because sometimes when people pay for subscription, they expect to get better dates here and there. So if you are able to reduce that friction and allow people to meet with maybe potential dates even more often, I think they can find incredible value, and that would help them to become, that builds the mood a lot better, as opposed to a new startup who wants to get into this dating matching game. I think it may be quite difficult. In fact, I've seen a lot who try to start, but then the users will get excited, they go on the platform and they realize it has been 2 months, I haven't got a date, game over, I'm going back to Tinder. So I do see that kind of things happening quite lately. I mean, I've been reading.
You've been reading. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Kevin, so I have a quick question, right? So, in terms of deploying cash, right? In terms of deploying cash, what's your approach, man? What's your approach to that? How much do you recommend people keep on the side? Should they stay 100% invested at all times? And in times like this, should they deploy good correction? How much should they actually What's your advice with regards to that?
So I'll go with two approach in the way I answered your question. So I think those are very relevant questions. I think that's at the top of people's mind even right now. So for me, I tend to be very heavy in equity. So I tend to, it may sound shocking, but I'm almost about 98% cash at times. So if you think about, hey, would I have cash deploy? Usually it's very, very limited. Usually I would just deploy whatever that I earn based on my work or whatsoever. So, but here's my thinking behind it, right?
Wait, hold on. You mentioned that you're 90% in equities, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically in terms of whatever you have, you're 95% invested. Okay, that's cool. Because you actually said cash. So I was like, 95% in cash, shit. Okay, so 95% invested.
98% in terms of equities.
Yeah.
The way I look about it is that, you see, I'll just give you a scenario. So previously, I actually deployed quite a bit into this company called C Group. I purchased it around $37, and the company have actually gone up all the way to $55.
Wow.
And now it has fallen back to about 46. But at 46, it's still higher than my initial price, right? So I think that if I would have, so the way I think about it is this, right? Imagine, so I'm just trying to find a simple way to explain this. So I'm thinking that every single time when I have cash, as long as the companies are sensible price multiples, and I'll buy it. Why is that so? The way I think about it is that the earlier I get invested in those companies, and if those companies would have grown their earnings when I started investing in them, so let me just rephrase it, all right? So let's say if I buy this company earlier, right? And because I'm earlier, I become a shareholder earlier, and whenever the business reported higher earnings, I will benefit with higher share price. And even though a crisis may happen or not happen, or let's say for whatever reason, right, this coronavirus things happen, the share price will drop. And this share price that drop, right, even though it has fallen, but it's still above my initial price because I've already gone in way earlier. And the fact is this, I think, I never wanted to do market timing ever since like 3 to 4 years ago. I realized that that's not what I'm really good at. But what I'm very good at is spotting really, really great companies that can grow for a long time to come. And so I've actually experienced this for myself is that even though I've been fully deployed, but the companies I've purchased, because they have been growing their earnings so well, even though 10%, 20% drop, the price is still even higher than my initial price. But I recognize that this may not be applicable to most people because the companies I buy tends to be small caps and they tend to be growing very fast. Because they are able to grow very fast, the share price tends to move quite quickly as well. But on the flip side, will there be cases whereby purchase the company even though it's accessible prices, but straight away the day later this coronavirus thing happened, right? Then I could have bought lower. But then I just think about there's so many scenarios that I could possibly achieve for myself, but I just wanted to keep things really, really simple. And if the price do drop, I would tell myself, so be it, just so be it. Because the way I look at it is that even though I purchased stock, the stock price drop, but if the earnings are growing, it's just like a coiled spring. When the spring is coiled, eventually it will bounce back up. So as long as I can live through that, right, whether it's 1 year, 6 months, if I can live through that, then I believe that the strategy that I'm using right now is something that's sound, it's something that's very practical, and over the years, I'm delivering great results for myself. But if you ask me what are my views about average investor out there, is that I feel that cash is always very important because the fact that I think after investing for a couple of years, you may feel okay to buy a stock and the stock drops down 20% for some months before it starts bouncing back. But most investors cannot feel that, right? They may not want to go through that as well. So I would say typically 25% or 20% cash would be very ideal because the fact that maybe you could be new in investing and the fact that you could actually start lowering down your average price would be something very, very attractive. But over time, once you are able to analyze company much more better, you are more sure about this company's long-term competitive advantage, then I think you should try to reduce your cash and buy more great companies.
Dude, so you've mentioned something along the lines of competitive advantage, long-term competitive advantage. How do you actually screen or maybe find for, you mentioned like small caps with long-term competitive advantage. How do you actually screen or find for them? And could you give us some examples?
Yeah. I think the biggest misconception out there for most people is something that you can screen out. I think that is quite possible in the past, but right now it's increasingly difficult because screeners are now free and financial data is so readily available.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is that I like to find, I like to form network of investors like you. So what I do is that every two weeks or so, I will just call a friend that's perhaps an investment manager or hedge fund manager that could be based in US or Thailand. Ask them, what are the companies that you are looking at? So sometimes we may be looking at this company that may not be growing. So okay, I'll just put our example here. So this company is called 3P International. Is this company called? So right now it has renamed to PaySign. So it's actually their payment processor. Back then, when you screen the numbers, it was really terrible. They're not growing very, very well. But then, as you dig into the earnings transcript, right, sometimes they will tell you things like, hey, this year we are probably finally going to launch our payment processing services for the plasma centers. We're going to be in maybe 30, 40 plasma centers, right? So these are something that's captured in the earnings release. These are captured in the earnings transcript. But in terms of financially, it's not shown up yet, right? So in terms of microcap, I think it's things that is very hard to screen. And sometimes it will require a bit of brute work. That means going down and reading the earnings transcript to see whether they are entering new markets, entering new releasing new products and what's the kind of revenues that it will bring in. So you kind of anticipate the revenues before they even come in. You kind of anticipate the financials before it happened. And this is something that initially I wasn't very good at. Over time, as I speak to more investment managers, I start to get their views on it. I start to develop the ability to call management, and that's how I gain confidence in those companies.
Nice. So, dude, I understand that you went to US to actually meet the management of PaySign,
So
right?
good. Yeah.
Right. So tell us about the management. How like what do you ask them, and are they biased in their views? How is the meetings like? What some key questions you actually ask management, if you don't mind sharing?
Actually, unfortunately, I fell sick at the last leg of the trip.
Are you kidding me? No way.
I didn't
Shit.
meet PaySign.
Oh
I
man.
met the CEO of this company called Galaxy Gaming. It's a it's a micro cap company that is supplying felt papers for casinos. So typically, when I meet the management, I would ask questions like, for example, like what has changed in the industry in terms of the dynamics, and who are your biggest competitor, or what is something that you can do that your competitors can't. Because every single time, if I think about it in a capitalism world, it's so true that okay, what's investing all about? If you simplify it, it's really buying a very small company at very accessible price and see it grow as fast as possible, and that's how you make a lot of money. But we also know that in the capitalism world, if I see a business that's making a lot of money, I would eventually want to do a business like that. I'll take away the market share. I'll try to do things a bit better, right?
Absolutely.
And then eventually the original business may suffer. So I always ask this question that I like a lot is like, what is something different about your products or services that is so unique that other competitors can't replicate? Or I will ask them, what is one feature that you have that's so sticky that your customers cannot do without? Or what is something that your customers hate about that you are solving right now? Because I always think about businesses that do well long term, they tend to help to save time, save money, or they provide better services. So I absolutely hate companies that are doing similar things. I always like to buy in companies that are doing something so innovative that other people are not doing. And I think it's a bit hard because if you talk about consumer products, that may not be so clear. But what I do is that I try to go deeper into those industries. And I think most importantly, I would like to get a sense of, the management. Sometimes I just want to know more about the story. So I say, hey, what has made you successful up to today? And I don't want a management to just talk about himself, but whether he gives credit to his team as well. And that's really, really important because then he's someone that's humble, is willing to work together. And I always ask this question, also very important, like where do you see the business in the next 3 to 4 years? Because there are some businesses or some business leaders, they can't tell you what are their goals in the next 3 to 4 years. But if the management is very detailed and they could tell you exactly what they are doing right now, then the chances you'll feel that they are credible, they know what they're doing, and they're on the right path as well.
Very nice, very nice. So you mentioned, so basically, if I heard you right, you mentioned two companies. You mentioned PaySign, which unfortunately couldn't get to meet the CEO, and you mentioned Galaxy Gaming as well, right? Great companies and a lot of room to grow, definitely. PaySign, I've done a bit of research myself. Just the growth in the recent few years has been explosive, man. Literally explosive. It's been insane, and great companies. Dude, so can I ask you, just one final question to wrap it up? So what is your approach to the number of companies you're invested in, right? So like currently right now, maybe, I know you follow like a vested approach, but how many companies do you think one should actually have? And yeah, why?
All right, this is a great question. For me, I would think for any ordinary investors out there, it's typically about 10 to about 12, because anything more than that, I ever read this quote, which is really, really relevant to this question right now. It's just like having a number of kids, right? If you have 10 or 12 kids, it's so hard to keep track of that. And in fact, sometimes it's very funny, right? Because we think that by owning more companies, we'll feel safer. But the fact is that when you spread your attention so thinly, right, you don't really understand every single company. And even though the earnings are out, you may not have time to even digest the earnings. So I would say that 10 to 12 is actually kind of like a very sweet spot, because obviously there are companies that are big caps, like Facebook, like Instagram, like Facebook, Visa, even for Match Group. You know that for sure that you want to analyze, like you don't really need to analyze it so much because you know that there's this strong tailwind that enables them to grow really, really well. But then there are some companies whereby you say that, hey, these are companies that they are still forming the mode. You are not so sure where they're heading. But perhaps, these are companies that could be really strong multi-baggers. So having a mix of both, I think you have about 10 to 12. That's that's how I see about it. But over the years, I also started with 10 to 12. I have slowly reduced the number of positions I have. So currently I have about 5 to 6 right now, because I tend to spend a lot of due diligence into those companies. And I always say that, hey, if you know that these 5 companies out of your 10 stocks, right? These are the top 5. Then why do you bother holding the rest? So over time, it made more sense for me to be more concentrated, but also recognize that being concentrated means more volatility, and this is something that I have to live with it. And I just know that volatility doesn't mean that this business is not doing well, because I sometimes I find it funny, there are times whereby I speak to investors, right? So sometimes the share price drop by 20%. They have this belief that, oh shit, this company is going to earn 20% lesser in sales, in profits, or they're going to lose 20% of the workforce. But if you can detach like share price and the business performance, then we never want to let share price dictate our emotions, but we let our financials, the fundamentals of business, to dictate where we are. So I say that to keep it short, I think 10 to 12 would be quite optimal for average investor out there. But a mix of a large cap which you don't have to pay much attention, and not as mid caps whereby probably you want to spend more time.
Can I ask, when you say like 5 to 6 for you, for example, is that across all the markets, or like 5 to 6 in US, 5 to 6 in Hong Kong, 5 to 6 in Singapore, or is it all together?
Okay. So when I started out investing, I was mostly in Singapore, in Hong Kong, Australia. I think ever since I got to know you guys, it opened up my to the world of US companies. And I've seen that it's so true that for many companies in US, they thrive a lot, and the addressable market for them is so huge, right? They can serve so many more customers as compared to businesses that are just in Singapore, right? Even though the Singapore companies, like how much more we can grow? Not a lot. And because of that, I've actually concentrated most of my money in US companies.
Okay. So basically, when you're talking about this, you're talking about purely in US companies mainly, yeah?
Yeah. So like, for example, talk about this company called C Group, right? So they are dominantly a Southeast Asia player. It's a Singapore company, but it's listed in US as an ADR. So there will be some companies that are listed in US, but they may be having most of the revenues coming from Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so C Group is something to actually look out for as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very, very interesting. Anyways, Kelvin, thank you for your time. It's been very, very insightful. I've been tuned into every word that you say, and I'm sure the listeners have found plenty of value as well. All right. So, friends, I highly recommend you go and read his blog as well, kelvester.com. I will put the link down below. Go and check it out. Go and attend his sessions. Go attend, growth investing masteries events as well. Absolutely brilliant. I love Kelvin. And, one thing about him, which I just want to share, is that, he truly has a heart to share. He digs deep into his investing work, and he gives his heart to his community, to his people that follow him. So I highly, highly recommend him always. I really love this dude. Make sure you follow him. He's truly, truly a gem to follow in Singapore, right? A rising star for sure. So thank you very much, Kelvin, for being on the show, and thank you for your insights, man. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Rash. It's an honor, and thanks for the kind words as well. I feel the same for you.
Thank you.